She was called the Virgin Queen, a symbol of power, the woman who led England into a radiant age of culture and maritime expansion. Elizabeth I, born in 1533, crowned in 1558, and reigning until her death in 1603. In portrait, she appeared as Gloriana, youthful, immutable, as if untouched by the ravages of time. But behind that halo of glory was a body that paid the price. In 1562, Elizabeth contracted smallpox. The disease left indelible scars, hair loss, discolored skin, and an increasing dependence on toxic cosmetics, white lead, mercury, that both concealed and slowly destroyed her complexion. Age advanced relentlessly, decaying teeth, chronic ailments, fatigue. The magnificent portraits and solemn court rituals became a veil, hiding a reality the courtiers never wished to face. This film does not seek to deny Elizabeth I's legacy, but to uncover the historical truth, hidden beneath the propaganda of a dynasty, steered by a lone woman through storms of religion and politics. We will journey from the tragic years of her youth, her mother's execution, her scorned childhood, to the heights of power, and then into the chambers where time left its mark in chemicals, scars, and loneliness. The Virgin Queen who rot while alive, Elizabeth I, the story of an immortal icon and a body forced to yield to the laws of nature. The radiance of the crown and the secrets concealed beneath the powder and paint. Elizabeth was born on September 7th, 1533, at Greenwich Palace, in the midst of the court's highest expectations. But instead of a long-awaited male heir, England received a daughter. Disappointment spread throughout the court. The celebratory tournaments for a prince were cancelled, and the letters of congratulation had to be hastily revised. From the moment of her birth, Elizabeth carried the mark of inadequacy in the eyes of her parents and her kingdom. Her childhood was far from peaceful. At just over 2 years old, Elizabeth witnessed a tragic turning point. Her mother, Anne Boleyn, lost the favour of Henry VIII after multiple miscarriages. In early 1536, Anne suffered yet another failed attempt to bear a son. And in that same month, Henry's first wife, Catherine of Aragon, passed away. The door was opened for Henry to seek a new, legitimate marriage, and the price was none other than Anne Boleyn's life. That May, Elizabeth's mother was led to the scaffold, accused of adultery and treason against the king. The little girl, not yet 3 years old, suddenly became the daughter of a condemned traitor, declared illegitimate like her half-sister Mary before her. All across Europe, whispers spread that Elizabeth was not truly Henry VIII's child. These cruel rumours clung to her throughout her youth. Even so, Henry never completely disowned Elizabeth. The king, though ruthless, took pride in his daughter's intellect and learning. Yet the trauma of her mother's death, combined with her own fragile status, left a deep scar on her soul. We do not know who told the young Elizabeth the truth of her mother's execution, nor how she felt upon hearing it. But from that moment on, her life descended into turmoil. At Hatfield House, Elizabeth lived alongside her sister Mary, a woman who carried in her heart a bitter resentment for the death of her own mother, Catherine of Aragon. The conflicts, the coldness, and the rejection from Mary cast a shadow over Elizabeth's formative years. That childhood taught Elizabeth a lesson she never forgot. The crown always comes with a terrible price. And for the rest of her life, that lesson haunted her, shaping a queen who was sharp, suspicious, and unyieldingly proud. After the death of Henry VIII in 1547, 13-year-old Elizabeth stepped into a world filled with danger. The king had left the throne to his young son, Edward VI, and during this transition of power, the English court became a silent battlefield of rival factions. Elizabeth was placed under the care of Catherine Parr, Henry's last wife, This was a formative period for her intellect and character. Catherine encouraged Elizabeth's education and sharpened her mind. By her teenage years, Elizabeth could translate classical works from Greek and Latin. Demonstrating a rare brilliance, she understood that to survive, she had to be different, not merely a princess, but someone capable of standing equal with any male statesman. Yet even in what seemed like a safe haven, she faced peril. Catherine's new husband, Thomas Seymour, soon revealed both his ambition and his inappropriate behavior. He frequently visited Elizabeth's chamber in the early morning hours, making advances far beyond what was acceptable toward a 14-year-old girl. What might have been dismissed then as playful is recognized today as abuse. Though confused and inexperienced, Elizabeth displayed remarkable composure. When Seymour was later arrested for political conspiracy, she was dragged into a harsh investigation. Relentlessly questioned, Elizabeth admitted nothing that could be used against her. She revealed an extraordinary instinct for self-preservation, shaping the political persona that would define her. Silent when necessary, shrewd when required, and never exposing weakness. When Mary I, her half-sister, ascended the throne, Elizabeth's situation became even more perilous. Mary, a devout Catholic, regarded Elizabeth as the living symbol of Protestant opposition. Every rumor of conspiracy, every whisper of rebellion, cast suspicion upon her. In 1554, during Thomas Wyatt's revolt, Elizabeth was arrested and sent to the Tower of London. It was the moment she confronted death itself. She pleaded not to be forced through Traitor's Gate, but her request was denied. In despair, she declared, "Here enters the truest subject that England has ever had. Though today I come as a prisoner." The days in the Tower tormented her with the constant fear of poison and execution, as Mary and her council sought to extinguish the threat Elizabeth represented. Yet she survived, thanks to Mary's political marriage to Philip II of Spain. Elizabeth was released. Her survival during those years was testimony to extraordinary resilience, knowing when to appear meek, when to remain silent, and when to display strength. When Mary died in 1558, Elizabeth, once a disregarded princess, once a prisoner staring death in the face, finally ascended the throne. And from that moment, she began crafting the image that would make her unforgettable to history. The Virgin Queen, wedded not to a man, but to England itself. When Elizabeth ascended the throne in 1558, she understood that she had to create an image that could never be shaken. In a world where women were often seen as weak, she chose an unprecedented path. She made herself into the Virgin Queen. She declared she would never marry, for she was already married to England itself. This image both reinforced her authority and prevented any faction from using marriage to manipulate the crown. Elizabeth turned her very singleness into a symbol. She commissioned portraits of splendor, in which her face gleamed pale as porcelain. Her gaze radiated authority, and her fiery red hair was adorned with crowns and jewels. To her subjects, she appeared eternal, immutable, rising above the frailties of flesh. But reality was far different. In 1562, just 4 years after her coronation, Elizabeth contracted smallpox. The disease nearly killed her. She survived, but her body bore marks that would never fade. Much of her hair was lost. Her skin was damaged. And from then on, she relied on toxic cosmetics to conceal the flaws: white lead, mercury, vermilion lip color, all became the mask that covered her growing obsession. Each time she appeared in public, Elizabeth bore not only the weight of heavy gowns but also layers of chemicals that slowly poisoned her own flesh. Her fear of aging and decay bound her ever more tightly to the image she had created. Portrait painters were ordered to depict her younger, more radiant, more divina. By the late 16th century, her portraits had become increasingly unrealistic, almost mythological. Meanwhile, Beneath the paint and powder, Elizabeth endured a harsher truth, rotting teeth from her sweet tooth and fear of dentists. Breath so foul that foreign ambassadors struggled to understand her words. And a face grown thin, cracked, and worn. This conflict created the greatest paradox of her reign. On one side was Gloriana, the goddess of victory, the queen who led England to triumph over the Spanish Armada. On the other was a frail woman, consumed by time and disease, living in terror of being unmasked. Within the court, whispers about the Queen's appearance began to circulate, but Elizabeth never allowed that truth to escape. She clung to the mask until the very end, turning her body into a battlefield where power and time confronted each other. And like every battle in history, time remained the ultimate victor. Centuries after the death of Elizabeth I, her long sleep beneath Westminster Abbey became a haunting subject once more. At first, her body was laid to rest in the vault of her grandparents, Henry VII and Elizabeth of York. But in 1607, her remains were moved to rest beside those of her half-sister, Mary I. Two women once divided by faith and politics were finally placed together in the same tomb, beneath a Latin inscription that simply reads, "Here lie Elizabeth and Mary, sisters, in the hope of resurrection." It was a tragic paradox, a lifetime of rivalry, and yet in death they became unwilling allies. In the 19th century, during an inspection authorized by Queen Victoria, those who opened the tomb recorded a chilling scene. The wooden coffin inside had decayed, its sides crumbling away, its lid broken to reveal traces of decomposition. Some attendants of old had once whispered that Elizabeth's body had exploded in the coffin from trapped gases. A grim rumor now recalled, reinforcing the dark imagery surrounding her. That final glimpse, after centuries, only confirmed an eternal truth. No matter that she had been celebrated as the immortal Gloriana, no matter that her portraits had depicted her as a goddess untouched by age, in the end, Elizabeth I's body shared the fate of all humanity: decay, dissolution, and consumption by time. And yet, here lies the paradox. As her flesh disintegrated, her memory and her legacy only grew more enduring. Elizabeth I, a body destroyed, but an eternal figure in the history of England. The story of Elizabeth I is not merely the chronicle of a glorious reign. It is testimony to the ultimate contradiction of the human condition. On one side, absolute power. On the other, helplessness before time. She was the Virgin Queen, who turned solitude into a political strategy, transforming the fragile position of a despised princess into the weapon with which she ruled for nearly half a century. She was Gloriana, who led England to the seas, defeated the Spanish Armada, and opened a golden age. Yet beneath the powder and the splendid portraits was a body in decline, the scars of smallpox, rotting teeth, hair nearly gone, a proud woman, forced to rely on toxic cosmetics to mask every trace of time, an immortal queen in paintings, but one whose own flesh decayed. Elizabeth's death, and the ghastly rumors that followed about her corpse within the coffin, only underscored a stark truth: no throne, no dynasty, can conceal the inevitable rot of the human body. But the greatest paradox lies here. Even as her flesh was destroyed, her legacy endured. Elizabeth I has been gone for more than 4 centuries, and yet, whenever the world speaks of the Virgin Queen, it recalls England's golden age, and remembers the woman who dared to defy convention and turn her solitude into an eternal symbol. And therein lies the answer to the timeless paradox. Immortality does not reside in the flesh, but in what one leaves to history. Elizabeth I, the Virgin Queen, a body long decayed, but a name that will forever resonate